When you're working on a project car, do you find it easy to prioritize the important things which the car needs to run instead of laser focusing on restoring stuff which will have zero to little influence on the car's reliability and performance?
Yeah, me neither. Hi, I'm Zaki and this is my third generation Toyota Starlet. And as we saw in the previous video, it's actually pretty well preserved for being 36 years old, as the natural weight reduction is only limited to the famous Toyota pockets. But judging by her relatively low mileage, I'd imagine she was sitting for the better part of her life, and so some of the needed maintenance was done quite a long time ago. If this belt cover is to be believed, the last time the timing belt was replaced was back in 2006, which last time I checked was a crisp 19 years ago. And because I don't want to experience a loving embrace between the valves and pistons, it's best to do that right now. Time for some maintenance. But this won't be just regular maintenance, it'll in fact be maintenance plus. First things first, we need to exile this fella. However, the brainworms that prevent me from taking the easy path have kicked in again, and so I'm not just going to be doing the timing belt. Instead, this whole engine is going to get pulled and given a nice little refresh. So you just sit back, relax, prop up your phone and enjoy your meal while I do some work on this 80s Japanese nugget known as the Toyota Starlet.
Taking the engine out of the car means taking a gamble on some nuts and bolts that have not been touched for at least a decade.
You all probably know Uncle 40 by now, but he will be our great friend in this endeavor.
As you can see, this vehicle is still of Japanese descent.
Oh, it's a 12 again. A lot of people were surprised that I rarely see 12s, but I mainly work on European cars and they basically don't use 12s, 13s everywhere. This is carburetor, it carburetes. Just to be safe. Small guy. He still has some juice inside.
Oh fuck yes. Thank the Lord there was no fuckery afoot. Something happened.
On these front-wheel drive cars, it is usually easier to take the gearbox out with the engine since everything is a nice compact package under the hood. So I had to drain the gearbox oil, which for its age looked pretty good.
I got it on my hands.
I drained the engine oil as well, as I was going to have to do that eventually.
Ooh, it's dense.
Then I could get on to removing the drive shafts.
No sir, I believe you're going to round it off if you're gonna do that. Let's try these fellas.
It's a 14, huh?
Even numbers only apparently.
It's actually not recommended to be pulling on a drive shaft like this, because you might...
That was not supposed to happen. Ah, it came out. Oh, here we go. Ah, you see, no fuckeries this time. This is either gonna be super easy or a nightmare.
Exhaust parts are almost always unpleasant to remove, so I decided to stop before getting my complimentary ticket to Rounded Knot Town and try another way.
Oh wait, we have to charge the process.
I always try to do the cooling system last, because no matter how well you drain it, it always makes an absolute mess.
Little small boy, yet he is very important.
The final hose. Me digging up in your foreskin. Ooh. Is the Zaki special. And now there shouldn't be any leaks from either side.
With that, everything was now disconnected and it was time to pull the engine, which came out without any hassle. But now it was time to remove the gearbox.
There is infinite amount of coolant in this hose. If you want it, you can come here and scavenge some. Look at how chunky this boy is. Pretty big chunkster. The slave cylinder is missing, so that might mean it's busted. Some fuckery afoot here. This is what it is. This is the curse of binding.
The gearbox doesn't want to come off. I think it's welded itself onto the engine, and it's gonna be a permanent part of it from now on, so I can't do anything about it.
Luckily, this is one of those things which can usually be fixed with a big enough persuadinator.
It's a boy! Okay. Ooh. It wouldn't hurt to replace this.
This was probably one of the easiest engines I've ever pulled, which I believe can be attributed to the car being an 80s base model Japanese Nugget, which means that there is no air conditioning, power steering, fuel injection, or anything like that. Anyway, now that the engine is out of the car, I need to put it somewhere. It would be pretty hard to work on an engine just hanging like this, so like any JoJo protagonist, I got myself a stand.
Never seen a block this small, huh? It's a 1 liter engine. What can I do? Ah, splendid.
Okay, so now that the engine was sitting firmly on the stand and the car was officially engineless, I needed to make a plan of how I'm gonna tackle this. There's a bunch of crustiness on almost every part of the engine, which could use a fresh lick of paint.
The general rule that I wanted to follow was if it's easy to take off and put back on again, I'll take it off and paint it. And even though it's old, this engine hasn't actually done that many kilometers in its life, so I won't be replacing the head gasket or the rod bearings. The head will therefore stay on, and so will the distributor. I'll also take the carburetor off with the manifold as a whole assembly, because I'm a man of EFI, so this is all a little bit of black magic to me, and because the car ran fine before, I don't want to do any fiddling.
The absolute first thing that I needed to do was order the replacement parts I'll need, as the delivery times for them are a little bit longer than for more modern cars. And since there are two versions of the timing belt available, I needed to figure out which one I'll need.
It's 24. One more tooth in here, so it's 121 teeth. So that's the one I need.
The final boss of stock bolts, the exhaust manifold. And this here is my friend, whom I lovingly call Oxy, I'm not fucking around, acetylene torch.
Let's give these a little taste test.
Very nice. There we go. Time for the main course, I guess.
The exhaust manifold and its accompanying heat shields are a bit of a special case. They are usually the hottest parts in the engine bay and therefore need special heat resistant paint. But before that, I need to get rid of all the rust, and there's a neat new technique I've been itching to try out.
This is a bucket. There's more. Citric acid, potassium carbonate.
This is a special rust removing recipe that was discovered by the YouTuber Backyard Ballistics, and I've gotten a couple of comments after my last rust removing endeavor to give it a try, so this is a perfect opportunity to do just that.
See what happens. Woo, bubbles! Oh, no! Uh-oh. Oh, we gotta add some more. Boobity boobity, let's go. Not again! Why is it so funny? But I lost important fluid.
Now we put a little bit of dish soap.
It's an exhaust manifold. It's a cast piece of steel. Very simple, and it doesn't have any protection on it anymore because from factory it was probably galvanized, but it's no longer because it wore out. So I'm gonna put that in and see what happens.
After a couple of days, it got rid of almost all of the surface rust, but it still left some of the more tedious areas, which I gave some wire brush and Scotch-Brite treatment. Overall, I was pretty satisfied with the performance, though I wish I could say the same about the weather we were having.
I think we have some snow.
Even though it stopped snowing, it was still way too cold to be painting anything. As soon as the can got cold, it became a really miserable experience. The consistency left the building and the runs were never ending.
Yeah, something's wrong. I think that's not the right temperature.
Next, I needed to take off all the various different brackets on the engine and in the engine bay. The trend of not having to deal with rust was something I wanted to keep going, which is why all of this stuff will be sent off to be sandblasted and powder coated.
Toyota! I will take the bumper off as well, because these are rusty and I want them to be not. Cos'è? Oh, montagnai, quello va. Okay. Nice. Is it one word or two words? I don't know. Whichever one is correct. Ambiguous space.
This is everything I've accumulated. But before I send them on their way, I need to prep them. By that I mean disassemble the fan shroud, air filter housing, and protect all the threaded holes with some spare screws.
Those and frying pan. I'll try to save this sticker if I can. Oops, what now? Okay, so now we're gonna strip the engine to completion. We're gonna take off the water pump, intake manifold and the carburetor. This is, I think, fuel pressure regulator or something like that. This will stay, and the distributor will stay as well because I don't feel like retuning the ignition. And I don't wanna retune the fuel as well, so these things are just gonna stay the way they are. And after the car is all assembled, we'll check if any of these need readjusting. This is where that leak is. It is leaking, but I think it's actually leaking from the water pump housing to the block. This is where the leak is coming from. I'd like to try no coolant for 800. No coolant for 800. No coolant, please, no coolant. You've got to be spent up till now. Okay, thank God. Yeah, there seems like there has been a bit of a leakage. All right. And now for the pump of the water type pump. He's seen better days. Oh, if we just give it a little wiggle. Sploosh. Cool. Alright. Let's see what we're hiding. Alright. There's your leak.
This is as much as I'm gonna be stripping the engine for painting the block. Well, painting the sides of the block is more accurate. In any case, before I do anything, it has to be clean. I bought this super special purposely concocted engine degreaser, hoping it would just loosen up all the old grime and I'll be able to wipe it off with a rag. Yeah, wishful thinking. Looks like I'm gonna have to do it with the old reliable, and for that I needed some preparation.
12 valvole.
When everything was protected, it allowed me to take a bit more of an aggressive approach.
You might have seen that I 3D printed these blocking plates for the exhaust and intake openings, and I bet you're wondering, did they work?
Yeah, this doesn't seal as well as I had hoped. Next time I'll just stuff the holes with rags like I've done in the past. At least none of it got into the oil.
Okay, we're good. So far I was able to avoid manually scrubbing the rust off, but that unfortunately ends now because there is no other way to get the block prepped for paint in this state. I used a bunch of different tools, but by far the most effective were these die grinder wire brush attachments. This small one is particularly useful for tight areas.
It took a while, but it cleaned up surprisingly well. After cleaning up the surface, I hit it with a layer of rust converter, and when that was dry, it was time to mask it and get it ready for paint.
Plenty, alright.
I used the same kind of paint I used for the exhaust manifold, just in black, and I borrowed this sprayer adapter from a friend. That, in combination that it was no longer freezing outside, led to a much better paint job. I was able to put on a couple of thick coats, and after it dried a bit, I also blasted it with a heat gun as per the instructions on the can. And when it was all unmasked, it did look pretty lovely, if I do say so myself.
Alright, if you had paid attention up until now, you would have noticed that I've been avoiding talking about two very specific engine components. The ones that are most visible from above and from below. The valve cover and the oil pan. These parts are a little bit special in this project because they both contain baffles to direct the oil. And these baffles can be problematic because from what I've heard, the sand from sandblasting can get stuck in the many nooks and crannies they contain, and an abrasive like that is probably the last thing you'd want in your lubrication medium. So I knew I would have to do this manually, and starting out I knew this was going to be tedious. I just didn't know how bad is it actually going to be. I was, how should I put this? Less than pleased.
This is taking fucking forever. Holy shit, and it's still not done. There's still some fucking paint left over. I've been grinding this for fucking so long, and it's not even halfway, it's barely halfway done. These two ruin the surface, and these two do practically nothing. This one does absolutely nothing. This one kind of slowly goes through it. I'm never doing this again. Never. And then there's still the oil pan. Oh my god, it's even bigger. I'm gonna fucking end it all.
After hours and hours of grinding, I managed to do a pretty good job on the valve cover, but the oil pan was a different beast altogether. No matter what tool I used on it, the most stubborn rust still remained. After about 4 hours of grinding, with my spirit absolutely shattered, I decided to stop wasting my time and just let the sandblasters finish the job. I only did that because the baffle in the oil pan has a pretty simple shape, and I was confident I would be able to blow or wash away any potential sand. I took both parts and brought them in for powder coating. Luckily, they haven't yet started on the previous parts, so everything was able to be done in one batch. And my misery was over. For now.
There you go.
Since I'm putting in all this effort, I thought it would be appropriate to use the same amount of diligence when it came to fasteners. From factory, all the bolts and nuts on the engine are zinc galvanized with an additional yellow chromate layer, which gives them that signature golden color. This is done to protect them from rust, but with age, the coating on some of them has worn out and the rust has creeped in. I want to return all of this hardware back to its former glory, and I know there are superior coatings available now, however I still yearn for that factory golden shine. But before they can be coated, the previous coating and the rust has to be removed. I've done some experiments on how to do that, even using our boy, the ultrasonic cleaner, but in the end I've learned that it's by far the easiest to just soak them in the backyard ballistics solution. I've separated them in two groups based on how long they need to soak, and after the 1 or 2 days have passed, I washed the fasteners, removed any remaining rust, dried them, and so they were ready to be galvanized. While I was waiting for everything I've outsourced to be finished, I wanted to clean all the parts I will be reusing.
Ooh. Oh yeah. There really is never an easy way, huh?
Now, I've dabbled with moped carburetors in the past, but with nothing quite like this, and I don't even want to entertain the idea of me messing something up, so I'll learn about how all of this works one day, but today is not that day. A gentle scrub with shop towels is all it's gonna get.
No one's gonna know. Everybody's gonna say, what a clean carburetor you have there, mister. And I'll say, yes, sir, I do. Do not look too closely. Good enough. Better if you don't look too much. He needs to be protected. Oops, daisy. Oh. There we go. Look how silly it looks. The absolute silliness of her face. Protect, 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 protect. Time for washy washy. Don't you just love it when degreasers don't degrease? It's clean. It's not super clean. Some of the dirt has become one with the car and is not removable.
By the time I was finished with the cleaning, all the replacement parts that I've ordered have arrived.
The goodies have arrived. Yeah, we got all sorts of good stuff here. We got the filter of the oil, pump of water, clutch unpaid intercylinder, filter of air, filter of fuel, belt of the alternator, belt of the timing, and all sorts of little things like seals and gasket. And of course, radiator.
The fasteners were also back from galvanizing and they looked very shiny. There was a little bit of flaking of the coating on some of the bigger bolts and I'm not quite sure why that happened. But otherwise they looked great and will be a nice touch when it's all finished. I also got the parts back from the powder coaters and they looked absolutely breathtaking. I went with a glossy black finish for that OEM look and I'm super pleased with how it all turned out. The bolts did a good job at protecting the threads, though I did regret not somehow masking the flat mating surfaces on some of the parts. Those needed to be sanded to sit nice and flush and it took a while. There was one more thing that I need to mention, and to quote Sam from Nitrite, there was a bit of a situation.
When they put it into the furnace, this paint started chipping a little bit, and it's only a little bit problematic because this being the oil pan is where the oil goes and we don't want this to be picked up by the oil. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna scrub as much as I can these loosened up parts and blow on them and then wash this real good.
I did a really thorough job when scrubbing the oil pan and I think I managed to get all the loose paint off. Luckily this problem was limited to only the oil pan and the valve cover was fine. Despite that, I thoroughly washed both parts. Alrighty, now the replacement parts have arrived, the brackets are powder coated, the block is painted, you are subscribed, please, and the hardware is galvanized, it's time to start the reassembly. And we'll start by doing the timing belt. Luckily for me, I managed to find an original Toyota service manual for this exact engine, which should make this job a walk in the park.
No.
Keyword being should, because Toyota didn't bother to put any way to lock the engine at top dead center, so this was quite a pain, not gonna lie. The belt was pretty tight even without the tensioner installed, and because of that, the bottom end kept moving, gaslighting me into double and triple checking the number of teeth and the timing marks. But I eventually got it on. Oh, and before I put the belt on, I also replaced the front main seal, with it being possibly 30 plus years old and all.
That's that.
Next up was the cooling system. Almost every sealing surface uses RTV gasket maker, so I had to remove the old gasket material and prepare the mating surfaces.
Yeah, that's not good. We're gonna have to put a fresh one here or we're gonna have leaks. A prank. A prank caught in the wild.
This was indeed a prank. From what I can gather, the protective coating on one of the thermostat housing bolts was applied a little too thick, and it therefore wouldn't thread into the hole. So I had to use the thread cutting tool to correct the threads. The next prank was that the new thermostat came with the wrong size seal, and because the old one was, well, old, I had to cheat a little to help it seal. The water pump was also a problem child, as the pulley it came with wasn't removable, and it was also in the way, so it was impossible to assemble.
How are we gonna get to this one?
Therefore, I had to press on the old one. So much about that new shiny pulley, huh? I then also installed the oil pan, the right engine mount and the intake manifold.
Oh, it's glued on pretty well. What the hell? Okay, I was like, holy shit, is the thread different? That would have been a prank and a half. I hope this won't cause any problems. If they will, they can always be replaced later, but it takes a while before they come.
Then it was time to finish it off with the belt cover, valve cover and the alternator / water pump belt.
Supposed to do this first, this over. There we go. Well, kind of. It'll need a little bit of help here. Let's do this. Last time I made a little mistake. I said the car doesn't have position lights because I thought these were the blinkers, and I didn't even notice the blinkers are here. So these are the position lights, and if you look inside, you see they're blown. So I've had this weird idea. What if today I lock in and put that engine in this car and then just be done with this project for a little while, because I'm starting to get sick of it a little bit. So if I just lock in and just focus and I just don't go to bed until that engine is all connected in this car and is ready to be turned on, except for, of course, putting the fluids in, because those come tomorrow. If I do that, we're done. We're done, which means no more worrying when this is gonna be done. We're just done.
You sweet and innocent child. Have you not yet learned that this is not how things work? You are not in control here. You do not decide when the car is going to be finished. But let's humor him and I'll show you how it went.
Firstly, I needed to prep the transmission. I had to replace the unpainted intern cylinder, which was a bit messy but not hard, and install one of the mounts. Then I had to reattach the CV joint, which I accidentally pulled off.
It's just placed in here. It's not attached even, so that's why you're not supposed to pull it. I understand now, it's a little bit different than what I'm used to. That's why this happened. Let's fucking send it, shall we? Fix it.
Then I had to lift the engine and remove the stand in order to replace the rear main seal. Again, because it was probably 30 plus years old.
Ah, crispy. Let's just hope we won't need you anymore.
And this is where shit hit the fan. You see, this is basically a seal that seals around the crankshaft flange, and there is one on each side of the engine. And I already replaced the front one. This one was a little bigger, however, which makes it harder to install. And installing these can be quite tricky by itself, because if you're not super careful and you're not pushing it in equally on all sides, you might twist the lip. Which is exactly what happened here. And when that happens, you can forget about any kind of sealing. The cherry on top here is that the seal was already past the point of no return, and there was no way to get it back out again without damaging it.
Which would be problematic because of the fact that delivery times for the parts for this car are quite a bit longer. So this could easily mean a week of waiting and not being able to continue the work. And at that point the project has been dragging for quite a while and I was eager to be done with it, which you might have gathered from before. So when this happened, I was really about to lose my motherfucking marbles.
Shout out to Father, who helped me save the situation by taking the seal off with the housing and pressing it in all the way. Luckily, the lip wasn't yet damaged, so we were able to reuse it. But I still had to spend another afternoon cleaning the RTV off the block and oil pan so I could reinstall it. Which I guess is better than having to wait another week for another chance. With that debacle now done, it was time to finish the whole mating the engine and transmission process.
Hot one.
What I really love about assembling this thing is how they put markings on all hex bolt heads which tell you how much tightening torque they need. And also all the bolts are still original, which means that everyone who worked on this engine before me managed to not lose any bolts, which is a streak that I'll try to maintain. I just eyeballed the position of the clutch plate, hoping I would get lucky the first time. And would you look at that, the gearbox slipped on without any problems. And so it was time to finally put the engine back into the car.
Okay. I think that's wrong way.
Now that the engine was comfortably snuggled in the car, I had to connect all sorts of stuff. I started with the wiring harness, connecting all the connectors and various ground wires, then the exhaust, the brackets for a vacuum line and a heater valve. I installed the ignition coil. Then I moved on to everything related to the transmission, the speed signal gear,
There we go.
the shifter cables, the clutch line, and of course the drive shafts. I hooked up the fuel and installed a new fuel filter, hooked up the throttle and choke cables, connected the cooling hoses, and then it was time for a shiny new radiator.
Oh, sugoi. Nihongo. Oh, like it was meant to be.
Then I installed the air filter housing with a brand new air filter, the battery tray and the battery of course, and I filled all the fluids.
No fun. We're raw dogging this.
Before I started for real, I first needed her to build some oil pressure.
Took out the spark plugs just in case there's some water or anything still inside. This is how it started and this is how it's gonna end.
just like that, she runs. And not only that, when the cooling system was bled, she warmed up to the operating temperature and then the fan kicked in, which means that everything is hunky-dory. Well, not everything. For some reason the clutch is now even worse than it was before, even after it was bled, which is peculiar and also something I won't be dealing with today. As far as I'm concerned, the engine refresh was a resounding success. Alright, so what's next then? Well, I have to troubleshoot that clutch, and I also have to fix the brake situation from the previous video, as well as that exhaust leak, and there are some other optional things that I may or may not do, but after that we can get her inspected, registered, and hopefully enjoy a nice relaxing summer drive. Oh, and before we wrap up here, there's one more thing I need to say. We need to pick a name for her. I already made a post about this, and I got some suggestions from y'all, but Star Destroyer the Toyota isn't something I was quite looking for. I'd imagine most of you started watching when we got the blue and the green and the red, but those names are more of an exception, as before we had Doris and we had Monica. So this is the direction I want to nudge you in. I have some of my own ideas, but I want to hear yours as well, and by the next Starlet video we'll pick a name one way or the other. And this is going to be it for today. Thank you very much for watching, and like always, I wish you a great rest of your day.